Got some stuff in the mail. Got my piston rings. Throw that up in the cylinder head and in the cylinder and see if I can get a gap like, I can't even see it. A gap like that. There's a random bag of bolts. And whenever I don't use them, I'm probably going to sell again. All I really needed was that guy right there for the front shock. Frame is turning out okay. Look at that. Got that all beat in. I still got some waviness there that I gotta work out. I had to weld a crack that was here, which you can't see at all, which is great. You can kind of see on the inside, maybe. Yeah, there's a little bit of the weld. Don't make this mistake. I'm putting this one in and I'm like, oh yeah, this is nice and squishy. And then I push this one and I'm like, why won't it go anymore? Well, it's because I got the wrong side. And then I went and chipped my paint because I tried forcing it in there. This is for the brake, so that has to be on this side. A couple things to note if you don't have parts is you want to use this type of a washer, and the shoulder end goes towards that. This is what squeezes the fender in between there so you don't destroy it, the plastic. And then sharp object in there and kind of clear out that old grease, and then put air on that and see if you can blow air through there, because you're going to need to get grease in there. That goes into here, and then there's also, you can't see it, but inside there is another hole that feeds that whole joint, which moves up and down constantly, so you want to make sure. And if you're trying to get these caps off, you can see that little peened over portion right there. I don't think you really need to get them off. Just clean them good, spin them, blow them out. This goes up towards up, basically. And the long end is outboard, or the side is inboard. So here's the final shock assembly. For those of you that might need this reference, there's a locking washer there. There was not one there. And then, again, make sure that that is on the right-hand side. The sloppiness came out once I installed that guy. Which you can see, then it's seated nice and flat. Taking a look at the carburetor, and apparently it's actually quite a bit different. It's got the same basic thing, but the intake's definitely different. The holes clearly don't match up, but I'm thinking about, I don't think I'm going to return it, so I might just slot those holes. It would definitely fit it. I can make it work. Oh, I have a coil. Probably ought to have a coil. And then looking at this bike, I'm like, where in the world does it go? So I've been checking this one out and trying to trace back this. It goes into the body on the left-hand side. And then I was like, well, where is it? And you can find it for me. But I think it's back in there. So I think I have to take the fuel tank off. And it's kind of in a weird spot. But I think I have to take the fuel tank off. After looking at the other bike, I realized there was a bracket that the coil was hanging off of. So a couple tries, but I threw together this guy. It needs to be grounded? Wait, is that true? This is the key to the one bike. I haven't tried to find a key, but I've had luck in the past making my own. And I got super lucky that this was broke off inside of the other bike. So I just went to Ace Hardware and found a key that's similar. It's a lot smaller, of course, but I'm going to Dremel that in and see if I can't get it to work. The answer is yes, it's okay to be grounded. Those are It's 100% attached to the end of that coil, and that goes directly into the body. That's the old coil, and that's their bracket. That's a little nicer than mine. Well, a couple of files and just a Dremel, very lightly and carefully. So tiny, but it works. I like it because it's low profile too. At least that way it won't get broke off as easy. I tried adding the putting the tire on because I'm running potentially a little bit bigger tire on this. It calls for a, well, this is the back 2.75 17, and I think it calls for a 2.5 17, but my son had a set of tires. There they are, 2.25 17 is what I believe it calls for, but I think the 17, I forget what it's called, the 70, I'm sorry, the C70 actually calls for a different size tire, bigger on the back, smaller in the front. I'm going to try and run those, and then I was like, well, before I put it on, let me get these lights. These are the ones I wasn't sure if they would work, but they seem to be working. And now you got to run, probably should put some protection on these wires, but you run these wires. And of course, they're not long enough to get through that. This is to run your wire harnesses through. The brake line, the brake light will be on that side as well. And then I realized this hole that I drilled or welded shut, because it was just a rusty mess, is actually where it passes through. It's supposed to come right out of here and go in. This one comes out, grabs onto that, and then comes across and goes in as well. So I'm gonna have to drill that out and find a grommet. But that's good to know for the next guy, I guess. Keep in mind this is upside down. The swing arm, based on that bike, in case anybody needs to know, comes in from the left-hand side. And the reason for that is you can take the nut off, and on this bike you'll see the exhaust pipe actually connects to that as well. So I tried to put that in correctly beforehand, and then the shock, this bolt with the washer, it threads through, and then there is a nice castle nut that goes on top of that when you're done. I just have it in here temporarily. And then if anybody's wondering what this is supposed to look like, that's your brake kind of lever stopper. It's got the spring in it, and a castle nut with a cotter pin in it and a washer. Got some parts in there, getting them chromed. This is all I have for the shifter. You can see it's broke off here. So what am I trying to do? I'm going to try and attempt to make one. Trying to decide how to get that knurling in there to make it look decent. I'm thinking about just running the grinding wheel down through it, but I might just try hitting it with a chisel. This one has a nice emboss in it to give it strength when you're pushing down. I think the material I'm using is maybe a little bit thicker. In any case, I have this, I don't know what this is. This is a tire iron for changing tires, but I'm using a ball peen hammer and trying to get just at least a little bit of shape in it. It doesn't look too bad. Once I get some stuff on there, it actually lines up. It's a little warm. It's ring day. 3 different kinds of rings. You get the oil kind of scupper part. You have this shiny one, and you have this other dull looking one. The shiny colored one is your compression side. That should be basically on the top. And then your next one is the oil kind of, well, this is, I don't know what the hell you call it, but it's the second one. This one is actually got some things going on here. So I have this magnifying glass that you can put on, and you can see right there it's marked. You have to look pretty close, but there's the 7.5 is on the one side, and then there is a T on this side. That means top, kind of out. And if this thing can stay in focus, I doubt you'll be able to tell, but there's a shape difference. It's angled, and it seems like it's angled where the ramp goes sort of from the top as it goes down the piston. So there you have it. I couldn't find anything on the compression side. All right, now for the nerve-wracking part. It's taking me so long to get these things. And I know there's videos out there that show you how to do this properly. But I'm just going to ease it on there. This is the one I'm most worried about breaking, because it seemed to be the easiest. The gap on this one was good. And I'm leaving the piston ring in. Or not the ring, but the piston itself in the bike. There, we got it. You really got to watch the gap and adjust it. So you put this in. You should square it with your piston to get it perfect. And then you measure this gap. Now, as the ring expands, that gap closes. If it's too tight, it's going to bind up and put a lot more pressure on your wall, or something bad will happen. And if it's too loose, you're going to get blow by, and you're not going to have the best compression that you could possibly get. And my guess is each of these rings has got a different, I don't know. And then you turn the rings so that the holes are opposite. That way the blow by that has to come through, if it does pass the ring, which it will a little bit, then it has to travel all the way through that, and then out, and then up through the other ring. Sometimes they have these on different angles. I don't know the answer to that for this bike. So I'm going to mic these out. Not mic these out. I'm going to use the feeler gauges, and I'm going to try and do my best to match the new ring set. Another thing I was not aware of 100% was that this guy was needed. And that's how, I was kind of wondering how in the world you get oil up to the top. You have two different types. This is the same, but this one has a longer lead on it. The longer lead is the one that goes into the valve. And I think the reason for that is that it gets it over top of the valves, and then as it's draining out, it's pouring on top of them, and then that just leaks down, and then somehow it goes back in to the engine, but it comes out of this side. So this is the one I'm going to put there, and you gotta have these washers on both sides of this so that it seals well. And technically, you're supposed to make these, if you're doing it on brakes or something, or in a car or anything like that, you should always never reuse this washer, is my understanding, because they compress and make your seal. You might get lucky, and I'm hoping to get lucky. The rings went in well. This slid right on. I oiled up the cylinder walls before. Got my new gasket in, made sure the surfaces were cleaned. Tighten those down to 156 inch-pounds, which is 13 foot-pounds, which felt like quite a bit. But I suppose you got to get all this crunched down and seated, so I was getting a little nervous. I was going to break these bolts, so I tried the torque wrench in the vise just to make sure I could feel it, because I kind of know when you're about to snap something off. And then the valve cover goes over top of that. Of course, you got to dig out the gasket. And the gasket kit I had fits fine. Those O-rings here are new for these guys, so I'll probably pull this off and actually replace that one, because this is the old one. And when I bought this new, because I was missing one, the best thing that I bought so far was this bag of random bolts. I actually bought 2 of them that came, and there's parts like this. I only have one. Actually goes like right here on the body for the main fairing, so that can slide in there. I don't have the other one, but at least I'll have one. I will probably take mine, sell them to the next guy, and he can use what he needs. Quick update. So I was putting my finger on here, kicking it over, seeing if I had compression. I did not have compression. Seems pretty simple actually to me, but essentially my valves I hadn't adjusted. So I loosened the set screw, or the set nut, and I got this to where the valve was up. I should be checking it off of top dead center, but you can kind of feel it. And then essentially I'm going to have to set the valve. So all I did is back this off so that I know the valves were seated. So if they're tight, that means they're pushing in, which means I wasn't getting any compression because the valve wasn't closed. So I undid the rocker arm adjustment to pushing on the valve, and then I started getting compression when I put my intake valve is the one that was just a little seep. I have oil in there right now, and you could hear it just bubbling slightly when you get it under compression. That only took about 3 minutes to take that apart, but if you look like right there, see how that ring? That's not a clean ring. I did not do the best job lapping it. I think that's where I saw the bubbling happening, and you can see it's just corroded. So we'll lap it out, try again. All right, I just relapped both valves again and cleaned the daylights out of it with some carbon choke cleaner and some air. Washed my hands several times to keep this, I should get this off the table actually, the valve grinding stuff. Anyhow, probably should know this, but all I did is then, to test it, is I sprayed some carb cleaner down in here and let it set so that the valve was down. And I got just a tiny, I was leaking like crazy out of both of them actually. So I've lapped them, and I'm not getting any leaking on the intake side, and just a tiny little bit. I mean, that's some pretty fluid stuff. I don't know. That's going to be the best I can do, I think. Honestly, probably if it's not running well or not good compression, I'll take it apart, get this to the machine shop, and buy some new valves. But I'm going to run it like this for now, and hopefully it goes. I think I'm ready to try and tackle getting the front fork back in. I wanted to show, I don't have enough hands here, this assembly. At the bottom there's a little flat washer, and then you got that rubber seal, which you sort of have to watch that it gets in there on the race so it's even all the way around. And then I think I had mentioned earlier that I thought the ball bearings looked bigger on the top than the bottom, but that is false. Sorry about that. They're 20 is what I'm counting, so I split them up here for the top and the bottom. And then I'm actually gonna, the way I'm gonna do this is up here in the race, I'm gonna fill that with grease, and I'm gonna use some marine lubricant that's kind of thick and gooey. but it's also, I think, more waterproof. So then you gently put each one of those in. Basically, that's what it looks like. Starting to look like something now. So the first thing I did to get the front wheel on, I was like, well, I better look at the other one. And I realized it's probably a good idea to get the speedometer cable up through here, because fishing that through and around this probably wouldn't have worked, honestly, because there's that big old contraption there. So I sent that through. And then I put the fender on, which you had to, basically you had to, those are holes, so you had to take the nuts off. The other ones I just clenched. I think that's going to be just fine, even though I didn't have the ear all the way. And the front wheel goes on pretty easy. You just got to make sure that you're sliding it into the brake thing. I've already got my speedometer tightened and hooked up. I'm going to put one of these on. Let's see, I got this from the Ski International. It's supposed to be for this. Let's see, you think that'll work? Oh wow, that's completely wrong. Figure, everything on this bike's been wrong. I'll show how this rear wheel assembly goes together. Get the camera in here. So you have a spring, keep that tight, a locking nut with cotter on this side. The bolt actually goes inside of there. If not, you'll be hearing it hitting all the spokes because there's not enough clearance there before it. And then I put a lock washer in there because it was rattling around, even though it's a shoulder bolt. It's tight now. I looked at the other one and it's pretty tight. Lockers, the wheel adjusters. I put the bolt on through that way. And then don't forget you got this spacer right here. Inside of there, that actually is keyed. The bolt that goes through fits in that slot. Then this tightens down to that. And then this tightens down the actual axle, which you stick like a screwdriver in there, right? Shock, you should have a washer and a bullet nut or whatever the hell they're called. And then you got a washer on that side. And then here on mine, I've got a thick washer on this side, because if not, you can see it's already wanting to hit. So once the seat goes in here, I think it fits in like right in that groove, and then this will get tightened, and then you also have a washer on the outside. I figured out the key, and actually I got a brake light. There we go. And if you turn the key to the second, you get a light, so that's cool. And then I was like just turning it over, seeing if I had a spark. The actual button, well, I don't have it hooked up here, so it's not going to, but it does turn over. And then I wasn't getting any spark, and I checked all those wires, just messing with the points here, just clicking them with my finger now, and I'm getting like nothing. So I was like, oh man. And then what I did is I sort of stuck the screwdriver here, and I got a little kick, and I was like, okay, well, when I do that, look at that, I'm just scraping. So now I know it's just the points that need to be cleaned up, and I'll just put like 400 or higher grit sandpaper back to back and just run that, pull that through a couple times. All right, keys on. We just want to hear it. Get the starter switch on. Yay! Well, if you're like me, you probably are wondering, how much did this guy spend on this thing? Well, I bought a box of parts for $200. Had the frame and, some other goodies with it. It seemed pretty complete. Finally, I got about $1,200, $1,300 in it. I do have a lot of wasted money in it. That's based on the Kickstarter being incorrect. Side covers weren't right. They're too big. I think they're for a C70. The throttle assembly for the handle wasn't working right. But I don't ship those back because shipping is more than the actual part. So keep an eye on that if you're ordering, because you may just end up keeping some of this stuff. In the end, I figured out you got to buy OEM if you can get it. And just fix it up, clean it up. It's better anyways for your build. And I don't know. To me, it's worth it. Overall, for that kind of money, the bike should be worth, you know, I don't know, $1,500 to $2,500, depending on the right buyer. And I enjoy doing it, so I'll be happy to ride it around. I got it finished, except for my chain guard. But I got my gold chain on there, so it looks pretty cool. Maybe. I've been riding it around a lot on the island. We did make it. It's very clean. It's a lot of fun. Doesn't shift gears all that well all the time. And I did have a couple of gas leaks, but I just didn't have clamps on the hoses. I got to get a better clamp on the other hose, not just a zip tie. I got the a new old exhaust. I'll give you an idea how well she starts. Battery's a little low. Starts right up. I've been using my toe to, I can't get my heel to put it in first. Switch here and see. Neutral. A little clunky in gears. I've adjusted the valve once. It was a little tight. I didn't have any clearance. Kind of had to do it by ear. Third gear. What are you doing? We're taking pictures, being dorks. Dorks? Who's a dork? Rip it up through the neighborhood on our sweet old bike. Nice. Done up. It's done up.